Nagasaki Prefecture is located on the westernmost of Japan. There are many islands such as Iki, Tsushima, and the Goto Islands, and it is famous for having the largest number of islands among the 47 prefectures. Not only the islands, but the entire Nagasaki Prefecture is surrounded by the seas such as the Sea of Japan and the East China Sea, so the coastline is very long, which is the origin of the name Nagasaki. Since Nagasaki is surrounded by the seas and close to the continent, Nagasaki has played an important role in history as a gateway to the world where many people and cultures come and go. Nagasaki is surrounded by a rich natural environment, such as Unzen-Amakusa National Park, which has Mt. Unzen, and Saikai National Park, as well as the seas. In Nagasaki, warm air flows from the Tsushima Current that flows north of the prefecture in summer, and cold air flows from the Eurasian continent in winter, and you can enjoy the four seasons. Nagasaki is where cultures and people from all over the world come and go in the rich nature and four seasons. Nagasaki has sightseeing spots which make you feel the various countries and the history. Among them, Mt. Inasa is the representative spot of Nagasaki. It is known as one of the best 3-night views in the world, and offers a beautiful night view overlooking Nagasaki City. If you visit there during the day, you can see Nagasaki, which used to be known as a gateway to the world, through looking buildings reminiscent of various countries in the world and cruise ships entering Nagasaki port. The islands surrounded by nature such as the sea and mountains are also wonderful sightseeing spots. Each island has its own characteristics. Kyushu, where you can explore the islands of various shapes by boat. Iki, where ancient Japanese historic sites are scattered everywhere. Tsushima, which has played a major role in history as a border island, and Goto Islands, where has a World Heritage Church. Many local cuisines in the prefecture were developed when Nagasaki was an international trading port. The mixture of cultural influences was reflected on the local dishes. At the mention of Nagasaki, many people in Japan immediately think of champon. The Meiji 30th period, it was developed by a local Chinese restaurant that wanted to provide a low-cost yet highly nutritious meal for the local Chinese students. Since then, it has become one of the well-loved and famous gourmets in Nagasaki Prefecture. Besides champon, shippoku is a famous cuisine in Nagasaki. Shippoku is a mixture of traditional Japanese, Chinese and Western cuisine that is unique to Nagasaki Prefecture. The recipes used for this fusion feast were developed during the Edo period as a result of international and cultural exchange between Nagasaki and other countries. Nagasaki Airport is the world's first full-scale offshore airport floating in Omura Bay. It is located in the center of Nagasaki Prefecture, and you can reach Nagasaki City and Sasebo City in about an hour by car or train. There are also flights to Iki, Tsushima, and the Goto Islands. It is 2 hours from Haneda Airport in Tokyo and 1 hour from Kansai International Airport in Osaka. Nagasaki, capital and largest city of Nagasaki Ken, Prefecture, Western Kyushu, Japan, located at the mouth of the Urakami River, where it empties into Nagasaki Ko, Nagasaki Harbor. The harbor is composed of a narrow, deep-cut bay, formed at the meeting point of Nomosaki, Cape Nomo, south, and Nishizunoki Hanto, Nishizunoki Peninsula, northwest. The city is shaped like an amphitheater, with its crooked streets and tiered houses clinging to the hillsides that enclose the inner bay. Reclaimed land at Bayside and the Urakami Basin provide some level land. Although the perception is that the city is totally modern and rebuilt since 1945, actually Nagasaki has a number of areas where old buildings and temples remain. Nagasaki was Japan's second oldest port open to foreign trade, after Hiradu. It was the only Japanese port permitted by the Tokugawa shogunate, military government, between 1639 and 1859, when all other ports were closed. Portuguese traders, who introduced Roman Catholicism and guns to Japan, first arrived there in the mid-16th century. Soon after the introduction of Catholicism, large groups of Japanese converted to the new religion. Feeling threatened by this new faith, the shogunate began persecuting Christians, including 26 martyrs, 6 Franciscan missionaries and 20 Japanese laypeople who were crucified in Nagasaki in 1597. The martyrs were canonized by the Vatican in 1862, and the Our Roman Catholic Church, built in Gothic style, was erected in 1864 to commemorate them. By the 1600s, tensions had risen to such a state that the Portuguese were expelled, along with the Protestant English. Trade was then restricted to the Dutch and, to a lesser degree, the Chinese and Koreans. Over the next 200 years, as the rest of Japan was closed to the west, Nagasaki became a center for information on Western technology and science. When Nagasaki was fully reopened to the west in the 1850s, it became a major port for trade. It was a leading East Asian coaling station and served as the winter port of the Russian Asiatic Fleet until 1903. Discover facts about the atomic bombing of Nagasaki during World War II. Infographic with relevant facts about the atomic bombing of Nagasaki, Japan. The impact and aftermath of Nagasaki's bombing. Here Encyclopedia Britannica editor Michael Ray talk about the atomic bombing of Nagasaki by the United States during World War II, including facts about casualties and damage. Atomic bomb at Nagasaki, Japan on August 9, 1945. 3 days after detonating a uranium-fueled atomic bomb over Hiroshima, Japan, the United States dropped a plutonium-fueled atomic bomb over the Japanese port of Nagasaki. Nagasaki, Japan, 1945, after the atomic bomb ruins in Nagasaki, Japan, September 16, 1945, 1 month after the dropping of an atomic bomb on the city. Discover more about the first atomic bombs. The first atomic bomb was detonated on July 16, 1945, in New Mexico as part of the U.S. government program called the Manhattan Project. The United States then used atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan on August 6 and 9, respectively, killing about 210,000 people. This infographic describes these early bombs, how they worked, and how they were used. In the early 20th century the city became a major shipbuilding center. It was this industry that led to Nagasaki's being chosen as a target for the second atomic bomb dropped on Japan by the United States in World War II. The bomb was dropped on August 9, 1945, and destroyed the innermost portion of Nagasaki. Between 60,000 and 80,000 persons were killed. Exact figures are difficult, however, for many records were destroyed by the bomb and the overall devastation of the area made accurate accounting for casualties impossible. Still, estimates indicate that some 40,000 people were killed immediately, with the rest dying within the next few months because of burns, injuries, or radiation exposure. The terrain and smaller size of Nagasaki reduced the destruction of life and property as compared to that of the atomic bomb explosion over Hiroshima, although the bomb dropped on Nagasaki was significantly more powerful. About 40% of the city's buildings were completely destroyed or severely damaged. Since World War II, the city has been rebuilt and is significant as a spiritual center for movements to ban nuclear weapons. Nagasaki is an important tourist center. Its industry is still based upon its large shipyards, which are grouped along the western and inner parts of the harbor. The city also contains numerous historic sites. The Sofukuji, Chinese temple, 1629, is a fine example of Chinese Ming Dynasty architecture, inhabited by Chinese Buddhist monks. A fine view of Nagasaki-ko is offered by the Glover Mansion, the home of a 19th-century British merchant and reputed to be the site of Giacomo Puccini's opera Madama Butterfly. Peace Park, on the Yurakamagawa, was established under the point of detonation of the bomb. The Roman Catholic Cathedral of Urakami, built in 1959 to replace the original 1914 cathedral that was destroyed by the bomb, overlooks the park. Pop. 2015, 429,508, 2020, 409,118. Nagasaki City is the capital and the largest city of Nagasaki Prefecture on the island of Kyushu in Japan. Founded by the Portuguese, the port of Nagasaki became the sole port used for trade with the Portuguese and Dutch during the 16th through 19th centuries. The hidden Christian sites in the Nagasaki region have been recognized and included in the UNESCO World Heritage List. Part of Nagasaki was home to a major Imperial Japanese Navy base during the First Sino-Japanese War and Russo-Japanese War. Near the end of World War II, the American atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki made Nagasaki the second city in the world to experience a nuclear attack. The city was rebuilt. As of February 1, 2024, Nagasaki has an estimated population of 392,281, and a population density of 966 people per km2. The total area is 405.86 square kilometers, 156.70 square miles. The first contact with Portuguese explorers occurred in 1543. An early visitor was supposedly Fernão Mendes Pinto, who came from Sagres on a Portuguese ship which landed nearby in Tanegashima. Soon after, Portuguese ships started sailing to Japan as regular trade freighters, thus increasing the contact and trade relations between Japan and the rest of the world, and particularly with mainland China, with whom Japan had previously severed its commercial and political ties, mainly due to a number of incidents involving waka piracy in the South China Sea, with the Portuguese now serving as intermediaries between the two East Asian neighbors. Despite the mutual advantages derived from these trading contacts, which would soon be acknowledged by all parties involved, the lack of a proper seaport in Kyushu for the purpose of harboring foreign ships posed a major problem for both merchants and the Kyushu daimyos, feudal lords, who expected to collect great advantages from the trade with the Portuguese. In the meantime, Spanish Jesuit missionary Saint Francis Xavier arrived in Kagoshima, South Kyushu, in 1549. After a somewhat fruitful 2-year sojourn in Japan, he left for China in 1552 but died soon afterwards. His followers who remained behind converted a number of daimyos. The most notable among them was Omura Sumitada. In 1569, Omura granted a permit for the establishment of a port with the purpose of harboring Portuguese ships in Nagasaki, which was set up in 1571, under the supervision of the Jesuit missionary Gaspar Viola and Portuguese Captain Major Tristão Vaz de Veiga, with Omura's personal assistance. The little harbor village quickly grew into a diverse port city, and Portuguese products imported through Nagasaki, such as tobacco, bread, textiles, and a Portuguese sponge cake called castelas, were assimilated into popular Japanese culture. Tempura derived from a popular Portuguese recipe originally known as paisagem da horta, and takes its name from the Portuguese word tempero, seasoning, and refers to the tempera quadridecima, 40 days of Lent during which eating meat was forbidden, another example of the enduring effects of this cultural exchange. The Portuguese also brought with them many goods from other Asian countries, such as China. The value of Portuguese exports from Nagasaki during the 16th century were estimated to ascend to over 1 million cruzados, reaching as many as 3 million in 1637. Due to the instability during the Sengoku period, Sumitada and Jesuit leader Alexandro Valignano conceived a plan to pass administrative control over to the Society of Jesus rather than see the Catholic city taken over by a non-Catholic daimyo. Thus, for a brief period after 1580, the city of Nagasaki was a Jesuit colony, under their administrative and military control. It became a refuge for Christians escaping maltreatment in other regions of Japan. In 1587, however, Toyotomi Hideyoshi's campaign to unify the country arrived in Kyushu. Concerned with the large Christian influence in Kyushu, Hideyoshi ordered the expulsion of all missionaries, and placed the city under his direct control. However, the expulsion order went largely unenforced, and the fact remained that most of Nagasaki's population remained openly practicing Catholic. In 1596, the Spanish ship San Felipe was wrecked off the coast of Shikoku, and Hideyoshi learned from its pilot that the Spanish Franciscans were the vanguard of an Iberian invasion of Japan. In response, Hideyoshi ordered the crucifixions of 26 Catholics in Nagasaki on February 5 of the next year, i.e. the 26 martyrs of Japan. Portuguese traders were not ostracized, however, and so the city continued to thrive. In 1602, Augustinian missionaries also arrived in Japan, and when Tokugawa Ieyasu took power in 1603, Catholicism was still tolerated. Many Catholic daimyos had been critical allies at the Battle of Sekigahara, and the Tokugawa position was not strong enough to move against them. Once Osaka Castle had been taken and Toyotomi Hideyoshi's offspring killed, though, the Tokugawa dominance was assured. In addition, the Dutch and English presence allowed trade without religious strings attached. Thus, in 1614, Catholicism was officially banned and all missionaries ordered to leave. Most Catholic daimyo apostatized, and forced their subjects to do so, although a few would not renounce the religion and left the country for Macau, Luzon, and Japan towns in Southeast Asia. A brutal campaign of persecution followed, with thousands of converts across Kyushu and other parts of Japan killed, tortured, or forced to renounce their religion. Many Japanese and foreign Christians were executed by public crucifixion and burning at the stake in Nagasaki. They became known as the Martyrs of Japan and were later venerated by several popes. Catholicism's last gasp as an open religion and the last major military action in Japan until the Meiji Restoration was the Shimabara Rebellion of 1637. While there is no evidence that Europeans directly incited the rebellion, Shimabara domain had been a Christian han for several decades, and the rebels adopted many Portuguese motifs and Christian icons. Consequently, in Tokugawa society the word Shimabara solidified the connection between Christianity and disloyalty, constantly used again and again in Tokugawa propaganda. The Shimabara rebellion also convinced many policymakers that foreign influences were more trouble than they were worth, leading to the national isolation policy. The Portuguese were expelled from the archipelago altogether. They had previously been living on a specially constructed artificial island in Nagasaki harbor that served as a trading post, called Dejima. The Dutch were then moved from their base at Hiradu onto the artificial island. The Great Fire of Nagasaki destroyed much of the city in 1663, including the Mizu Shrine at the Kofuku Temple patronized by the Chinese sailors and merchants visiting the port. In 1720, the ban on Dutch books was lifted, causing hundreds of scholars to flood into Nagasaki to study European science and art. Consequently, Nagasaki became a major center of what was called Ranjaku, or Dutch learning. During the Edo period, the Tokugawa shogunate governed the city, appointing a Hatamoto, the Nagasaki Bujyo, as its chief administrator. During this period, Nagasaki was designated a shogunal city. The number of such cities rose from 3 to 11 under the Tokugawa administration. Consensus among historians was once that Nagasaki was Japan's only window on the world during its time as a closed country in the Tokugawa era. However, nowadays, it is generally accepted that this was not the case, since Japan interacted and traded with the Ryukyu Kingdom, Korea, and Russia through Satsuma, Tsushima and Matsumi respectively. Nevertheless, Nagasaki was depicted in contemporary art and literature as a cosmopolitan port brimming with exotic curiosities from the Western world. In 1808, during the Napoleonic Wars, the Royal Navy frigate HMS Phaeton entered Nagasaki harbor in search of Dutch trading ships. The local magistrate was unable to resist the crew's demand for food, fuel, and water, later committing seppuku as a result. Laws were passed in the wake of this incident strengthening coastal defenses, threatening death to intruding foreigners, and prompting the training of English and Russian translators. The Tojin-yashiki or Chinese factory in Nagasaki was also an important conduit for Chinese goods and information for the Japanese market. Various Chinese merchants and artists sailed between the Chinese mainland and Nagasaki. Some actually combined the roles of merchant and artist, such as 18th-century Yihai. It is believed that as much as one-third of the population of Nagasaki at this time may have been Chinese. The Chinese traders at Nagasaki were confined to a walled compound, Tojin-yashiki, which was located in the same vicinity as Dejima Island, and the activities of the Chinese, though less strictly controlled than the Dutch, were closely monitored by the Nagasaki Bugyo. With the Meiji Restoration, Japan opened its doors once again to foreign trade and diplomatic relations. Nagasaki became a treaty port in 1859 and modernization began in earnest in 1868. Nagasaki was officially proclaimed a city on April 1, 1889. With Christianity legalized and the Kakure Kirishiten coming out of hiding, Nagasaki regained its earlier role as a center for Roman Catholicism in Japan. During the Meiji period, Nagasaki became a center of heavy industry. Its main industry was shipbuilding, with the dockyards under control of Mitsubishi Heavy Industries becoming one of the prime contractors for the Imperial Japanese Navy, and with Nagasaki Harbor used as an anchorage under the control of nearby Sasebo Naval District. During World War II, at the time of the nuclear attack, Nagasaki was an important industrial city, containing both plants of the Mitsubishi Steel and Arms Works, the Akonura Engine Works, Mitsubishi Arms Plant, Mitsubishi Electric Shipyards, Mitsubishi Steel and Arms Works, Mitsubishi Urakami Ordnance Works, several other small factories, and most of the port storage and transshipment facilities, which employed about 90% of the city's labor force, and accounted for 90% of the city's industry. These connections with the Japanese war effort made Nagasaki a major target for strategic bombing by the Allies during the war. In the 12 months prior to the nuclear attack, Nagasaki had experienced 5 small-scale air attacks by an aggregate of 136 U.S. planes which dropped a total of 270 tons of high explosives, 53 tons of incendiaries, and 20 tons of fragmentation bombs. Of these, a raid of August 1, 1945, was the most effective, with a few of the bombs hitting the shipyards and dock areas in the southwest portion of the city, several hitting the Mitsubishi Steel and Arms Works, and 6 bombs landing at the Nagasaki Medical School and Hospital, with 3 direct hits on buildings there. While the damage from these few bombs was relatively small, it created considerable concern in Nagasaki, and a number of people, principally school children, were evacuated to rural areas for safety, consequently reducing the population in the city at the time of the atomic attack. On the day of the nuclear strike, August 9, 1945, the population in Nagasaki was estimated to be 263,000, which consisted of 240,000 Japanese residents, 10,000 Korean residents, 2,500 conscripted Korean workers, 9,000 Japanese soldiers, 600 conscripted Chinese workers, and 400 Allied POWs. That day, the Boeing B-29 Superfortress Boxcar, commanded by Major Charles Sweeney, departed from Tinian's North Field just before dawn, this time carrying a plutonium bomb, code-named Fat Man. The primary target for the bomb was Kokura, with the secondary target being Nagasaki, if the primary target was too cloudy to make a visual sighting. When the plane reached Kokura at 9:44 a.m. 10:44 a.m. Tinian time, the city was obscured by clouds and smoke, as the nearby city of Yasuda had been firebombed on the previous day. The steel plant in Yasuda had also instructed their workforce to intentionally set fire to containers of coal tar, to produce target-obscuring black smoke. Unable to make a bombing attack on visual because of the clouds and smoke, and with limited fuel, the plane left the city at 10:30 a.m. for the secondary target. After 20 minutes, the plane arrived at 10:50 a.m. over Nagasaki, but the city was also concealed by clouds. Desperately short of fuel and after making a couple of bombing runs without obtaining any visual target, the crew was forced to use radar to drop the bomb. At the last minute, the opening of the clouds allowed them to make visual contact with a racetrack in Nagasaki, and they dropped the bomb on the city's Urakami Valley midway between the Mitsubishi Steel and Arms Works in the south, and the Mitsubishi Urakami Ordnance Works in the north. The bomb exploded 47 seconds after its release, at 11:02 a.m. at an approximate altitude of 1,800 feet. Less than a second after the detonation, the north of the city was destroyed and more than 10% of the city's population were killed. Among the 35,000 deaths were 150 Japanese soldiers, 6,200 out of the 7,500 employees of the Mitsubishi munitions plant, and 24,000 others, including 2,000 Koreans. The industrial damage in Nagasaki was high, leaving 6.880% of the non-dock industrial production destroyed. It was the second and, to date, the last use of a nuclear weapon in combat, and also the second detonation of a plutonium bomb. The first combat use of a nuclear weapon was the Little Boy bomb, which was dropped on the Japanese city of Hiroshima on August 6, 1945. The first plutonium bomb was tested in central New Mexico, United States, on July 16, 1945. The Fat Man bomb was more powerful than the one dropped over Hiroshima, but because of Nagasaki's more uneven terrain, there was less damage. The city was rebuilt after the war, albeit dramatically changed. The pace of reconstruction was slow. The first simple emergency dwellings were not provided until 1946. The focus of redevelopment was the replacement of war industries with foreign trade, shipbuilding, and fishing. This was formally declared when the Nagasaki International Culture City Reconstruction Law was passed in May 1949. New temples were built, as well as new churches, owing to an increase in the presence of Christianity. Some of the rubble was left as a memorial, such as a one-legged torii at Suno Shrine and an arch near Ground Zero. New structures were also raised as memorials, such as the Atomic Bomb Museum. Nagasaki remains primarily a port city, supporting a rich shipbuilding industry. On January 4, 2005, the towns of Iajima, Koyaki, Nomozaki, Sanwa, Sotome, and Takashima, all from Nishiznoji district, were officially merged into Nagasaki along with the town of Kinkai the following year. Nagasaki and Nishiznoji peninsulas are located within the city limits. The city is surrounded by the cities of Isahiya and Saikai, and the towns of Togitsu and Nagayo in Nishiznoji district. Nagasaki lies at the head of a long bay that forms the best natural harbor on the island of Kyushu. The main commercial and residential area of the city lies on a small plain near the end of the bay. Two rivers divided by a mountain spur form the two main valleys in which the city lies. The heavily built-up area of the city is confined by the terrain to less than 4 square miles, 10 square kilometers. Universities. Kwasui Women's University, Nagasaki Institute of Applied Science, Nagasaki Junshin Catholic University. Nagasaki University, Nagasaki University of Foreign Studies, Nagasaki Wesleyan University. Junior colleges. Nagasaki Junior College, Nagasaki Junshin Junior College. Nagasaki Gyakusei Junior College, formerly Tamaki Women's Junior College, closed 2012. Nagasaki Women's Junior College. Economy. Machinery and heavy industry, Mitsubishi, shipbuilding. The nearest airport is Nagasaki Airport in the nearby city of Omura. The Kyushu Railway Company, JR Kyushu, provides rail transportation on the Nishi-Kyushu Shinkansen and Nagasaki Main Line, whose terminal is at Nagasaki Station. In addition, the Nagasaki Electric Tramway operates 5 routes in the city. The Nagasaki Expressway serves vehicular traffic with interchanges at Nagasaki and Susukazuka. In addition, 6 national highways crisscross the city: Route 34, 202, 206, 251, 324, and 499. Demographics. On August 9, 1945, the population was estimated to be 263,000. As of March 1, 2017, the city had a population of 505,723 and a population density of 1,000 people per km2. Sports. Nagasaki is represented in the J.League of Football with its local club, Vivaran Nagasaki. Main sites. Basilica of the 26 Holy Martyrs of Japan, Confucius Shrine, Nagasaki, Dejima Museum of History. Former residence of Shuhan Takashima, Former site of Latin Seminario. Former site of the British Consulate in Nagasaki. Former site of Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation Nagasaki branch. Glover Garden, former Glover residence, former Alt residence, former Ringer residence. Former Walker residence. Fukusaiji. Gunkanjima. Higashi Yamate Junaban Mansion. Kazagashira Park. Kofukuji. Megane Bridge. Mount Inasa. Nagasaki Atomic Bomb Museum, located next to the Peace Park. Nagasaki Museum of History and Culture. Nagasaki National Peace Memorial Hall for the Atomic Bomb Victims. Nagasaki Peace Park. Atomic Bomb Hypocenter, located near the Peace Park. Nagasaki Peace Pagoda. Nagasaki Penguin Aquarium. Nagasaki Chinatown. Nagasaki Science Museum. Nagasaki Subtropical Botanical Garden. Nyakodu Hermitage. Orandazaka. Suno Shrine, one-legged stone torii, sometimes called an arch or gateway. Sakamoto International Cemetery. Shofukuji. Seibold Memorial Museum. Sofukuji, Daihoden and Daipomen are national treasures of Japan. Suwa Shrine. Seiusaku Endo Literature Museum. Tateyama Park. 26 Martyrs Museum and Monument. Nagasaki Prefectural Art Museum. Urakama Cathedral. Myokan, a temple where the white snake is worshipped. The Nagasaki Lantern Festival is celebrated annually over the first 15 days of Chinese New Year and is the largest of its kind in all of Japan. Kunchi, the most famous festival in Nagasaki, is held from October 7 to 9. The Prince Takamatsu Cup Nishi Nippon Round Kyushu Ikiden, the world's longest relay race, begins in Nagasaki each November. The city of Nagasaki maintains sister cities or friendship relations with other cities worldwide. Hiroshima, Japan. St. Louis, United States, 1972. St. Paul, United States, 1955. Dubnica, Bulgaria. Santos, Brazil, 1972. Fuzhou, China, 1980. Middelburg, Netherlands, 1978. Porto, Portugal, 1978. Vaux-sur-Or, France, 2005. Thank you for watching this video.